everybody. Well, it's a beautiful sunny Monday afternoon here. The skies are blue. We have good weather today, and I hope that you've been able to get out and enjoy some of that weather. Maybe even open your windows up in your apartment, allow some of that breeze to come in today. You know, over the past several weeks as we have been in this stay-at-home order, my wife has had kind of an extensive honey-do list for me. In fact, over several weeks, I've built a new raised garden bed in our backyard. I've built some new raised flower beds, and both of those required that I bring in a couple of truckloads of topsoil and shovel those one scoop at a time. I've also done quite a bit of weeding and pruning and even planting some new grass seed. And in doing all those things, it was just a reminder to me that when you're doing gardening and planting, it demands some patience. Because about 3 weeks ago, I planted some garden seed in a barren spot that we had in our backyard, and I covered it with straw, and I kept waiting for the grass to grow. We had plenty of rain, some sunshine, and nothing seemed to be happening. And then finally on Saturday, we saw the first blades of grass peek up through the straw. So as a reminder to me, I got to be patient when we're planting and sowing things. You know, about 4 or 5 years ago, I planted a small Japanese maple tree in my front yard. It was probably only about 18 inches tall. I think I got it at Kroger for maybe $9.99. You know, but that first year, that little Japanese maple didn't really grow at all. And the second year, it hardly grew any either. The third year it did grow some, and then last year it grew also. And don't you know, this spring when I got out, I discovered as it started to grow leaves on it that Japanese maple was as tall as I am. So in thinking about all of this yard work and planting things that I've been doing, it reminded me of something the Apostle Paul said in his letter to the church of the Galatians. The church of the Galatians were a number of churches in the region of Galatia, also known as Asia Minor, and Paul wrote a letter to them. In Galatians 6, chapter 6, verses 9 and 10, Paul said this. He said, "Let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith." So in those two small verses there, Paul says some things that really got my attention. The first thing that he said that got my attention was this. He said, we're not to grow weary of doing good things for other people. And what I've found in doing all this gardening and yard work is I get weary a lot quicker these days. I guess I'm not the young whippersnapper that I used to be. You know, some days I just don't feel like going out and doing the yard work. I want to rest, I want to relax, I want to take it easy, but I know if I don't do the work, there isn't going to be any fruit that comes from my labor. So Paul says we're not to grow weary of doing good things for other people. And there's a promise associated with it. And the promise is this. Paul says that we will reap from what we have sown. Well, we started our vegetables for our garden this year indoors in small containers with seeds that somebody else had harvested. We started them in small containers, and then as they began to grow, we transferred them to bigger containers, and they're just about ready to be planted maybe in another couple of weeks. So we planted seeds for tomatoes and cucumbers, beans and peas, even some watermelon and horseradish and cilantro. But then I realized whoever harvested those seeds originally, they'll never see the tomatoes that we'll be eating later this summer. So reaping may come through the hands of others we entrusted seed to. I think what that means to us in the big picture is that the things that we sow in this life we may never reap them until the next life. So Paul says, don't grow weary in doing good for others, because eventually you're going to reap from what you've sown. And he says we're to do good to all people, especially those who have faith. Did you know that God created us and destined us to do good things for others? I believe it's in our goodness toward others, the goodness of God is revealed to people. We don't do good things for others only when they do something good for us. We're just to do good and leave the outcome up to God. And us doing good for people of faith is one of God's and Jesus's way of showing that he cares for people of faith. God knows what our needs are, and sometimes he sends other people into our lives to meet our needs, especially other Christian people. Paul wrote to the Ephesian church in Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 10, and this is what Paul said to the Ephesian church. He says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." You know, you never know how God is going to use you to sow something into another person's life. My stepson's stepson came to me this past Saturday as I was doing some yard work. He had some questions for me. Evidently, he had been watching some teaching about the Bible on YouTube. He's 12 years old, and his main question was he wanted to know if what he had been listening to was true. And as he told me what he had been listening to, I affirmed to him that it was indeed true. All it required for me was taking a little bit of time to listen to what he had to say and then give him the feedback that he was seeking. I wanted to leave you with maybe a question or two today. What good thing could you do for somebody today? Maybe it's a surprise phone call. Maybe it's taking a walk with somebody. The weather's beautiful out there. Maybe it's writing a few words of encouragement in a card or a note and dropping it in somebody's mailbox. Maybe it's sharing with somebody else the goodness that God and Jesus have shown you in your life. We're created to do good things for people. And Paul says we got to keep sowing and never grow weary of doing that, because at some point in this life or the next life, we're going to end up reaping from what we sow. So don't grow weary of doing good things for others. And until the next time, God bless all of you. Have a great day.